Wow, this one is gonna be a long one, so strap in. Hey y'all, today we're going to be reviewing Blonde, the 2022 film adaptation of Joyce Carol Oates' novel, which is a fictionalized version, a historical fiction, take on Marilyn Monroe's life. And this one has been a biopic, which again, is it a biopic? I guess. Like, I'd have to put the definition of biopic on the screen, which I'll probably do in editing. It's not coming from a place of true source material and then artistic liberties being taken. Like, it's already based on a fictional thing. That's like the first thing I want to get out of the way with this video. This film, I've done a lot of research into like the production of it. It's been kind of in the works for about 10 years or so, collecting different talent, producers, multiple different actresses in the role of Norma Jean, which is the real life name of Marilyn Monroe outside of her stage name, which is what she's referred to for a majority of this film. So that's kind of how I'm gonna try to distinguish between what I'm talking about here. I'm not gonna be able to keep it consistent the whole video, but just in case you hear that, let's get that stuff out of the way now. So this film, there's been just a lot of speculation. There's been talk of what the content of the film will include because it was the first streaming movie ever to receive an NC-17 rating. So there's a lot to dissect to this movie. The biggest takeaway I have from Blonde is it's brutal and difficult to watch. It's not pretty, it's not pleasant. It is art above entertainment. You could take cinema or film as an entertainment form, as something people do to spend time, to enjoy things, to get away from their own worries and concerns. And then there's like film and cinema as an art form in a way that, like, if you've ever seen like a painting and been like, I don't really get the meaning of this, but it made me feel a certain way, or maybe it doesn't make you feel a certain way, and a lot of people will say like, oh, that's bad art then, or whatever. Kind of just the merging of the art world and the entertainment world is where movies usually lie. And this one, if that's a spectrum, is way further on the art side than it is the entertainment side. There's definitely a narrative storyline to follow, although it is broken up throughout the film. There's time jumps throughout the movie, there's changing of actors, there's different ways that the film itself formats the story that is different from portion to portion, and therefore the big things that you kind of take away from the movie are the consistent themes and the emotions you have toward the film, which for me at least were pretty consistent throughout the film, of like, I feel so much empathy and sympathy for this woman who just had a sad life in a lot of ways, who had a lot of high moments, seen by the world as high moments, but personally had a lot of low moments. And my biggest feeling that I walked away from this movie with was the feeling of, if you're just waiting and holding on and gripping really tight to what you have, hoping that it can get you through a really dark period, or to get to the next day where hopefully someday things are going to be better. And in the case of this film, in the case of the character of Norma Jean in her life, that was not the case. There just never was that better day, that promise things are going to be peaceful and pleasant and we're going to get to a point where you can rest. And some might argue that making of this movie continues to perpetuate that feeling of lack of rest. I think having visceral reactions to this movie is kind of the MO for the director. He I think wants you to watch this movie and feel very taken aback or kind of hurt, or like just have that strong emotional reaction to it, positive or negative, towards the movie. It's very Citizen Kane-esque. In the life of a figure like Marilyn Monroe, there is a stage personality of Marilyn Monroe. There is the behind-the-scenes Norma Jean, and there is these vast decades where different opinions and thoughts and speculation has been made about them and their life and their work. And so you're never going to know who Marilyn Monroe was really. Is there actually a definitive version of the truth out there, or can we only guess? And so I felt very much like Citizen Kane, where the whole point of that movie is that no one can really understand or know this man for who he truly was, or why his last words were Rosebud, and what that symbolized to him, or what was important to him, because they all had these different takeaways of his life. And even the way that that film is segmented feels very similar here. We follow Norma Jean not necessarily day to day of her life or year to year of her life, but through monumentous periods of her life, the emotions and the feelings and the stakes associated with that different relationship or movie or etc. And that's very much what this film felt like. In that way, way. I felt like it was extremely literary, which of course, like I said previously, this is adapted from a nearly 1,000-page novel, so I expected it to feel kind of dense material-wise. And then of course, like, I have been reading a lot lately, so this reminded me of a few different books, the names of which I will put on the screen here now, just for a variety of different reasons. I guess if you don't want to watch this movie but want to feel maybe some or half of the emotions that are associated with it, these are books that I felt similarly or associate with this movie because of the time frame of it all. The other thing that I really noticed about this film was how much it relies on Irving Goffman's concept of the front stage and backstage self, which, if you're not familiar, this is a sociological concept that was created by Irving Goffman, and it described the different ways in which people present a act to other people, to the world. You act different in different situations. For example, you know that when you enter a classroom, you play the role as student, even if it's kind of subconscious to you because you do it every single day. But that concept of the front stage self is a role you take on and play. And then the backstage self is either who you truly are or who you are when no one's watching, and that sort of thing. So this is a concept that I've kind of studied quite a bit in different classes in tandem with film studies, because of course, we're actually talking about real people who are acting. And in this movie, there's another additional layer to that. So we have Ana de Armas, who is playing Norma Jean, who within this film is playing the character of Marilyn Monroe, or as this movie wants you to know her as, the Blonde. The movie is called Blonde for a reason, and if you look at the IMDb billing of all of the different actors and characters, you'll notice that two of Marilyn Monroe's major well-known marriages are not distinguished by the actual name of the man that she was married to, but by kind of their profession or their, like, what they're known for. Joe DiMaggio is known as the ex-athlete in the film and is never stated by name, nor is Arthur Miller, who is played by Adrian Brody, who is referred to as the playwright. And I think this is something that's really fascinating when you look at the actual name of the film is Blonde. So even though Norman, like, I think this is fascinating because in a lot of ways, we're not making a judgment on Joe DiMaggio or Arthur Miller and who they were as a person, but we get to see them kind of take on this role of her husband, just their careers and how that maybe shapes them as a person, but that isn't necessarily defining who they were and making a judgment call on them in that moment. No, obviously they're being portrayed in this film and you can take away different character traits from them and stuff, but I just think that's another aspect that's really interesting because that's directly carried over from the book, but I think in a film where there is a performance literally as well as the kind of metaphorical one going on within this story, I think that's extremely, extremely fascinating. So highly recommend looking into that concept if that's something that kind of intrigues you. Going off of that too, a lot of this is focused on Marilyn's career. Yes, there are scenes from when Norma Jean is a child and kind of how those things affect her later on in life. It's all in connection to how her roles made her feel. So a lot of this film is kind of broken into different iconic moments of Marilyn Monroe that you know. There is one of her first movies where she plays Nell, who is in this film portrayed to be kind of a character that Marilyn thinks she can play because that's exactly what her mother was like, and there's a lot of kind of visual tie-ins to make you sense that. There's a lot of other really interesting like film as an art form things to take away from this movie. Like, it's genuinely one I could see clips being used in film school for years to come because there's so much to analyze about why these specific choices were made, if it was truly an aesthetic choice or if it serves some narrative purpose. For example, there is a lot of aspect ratio changes. Like, you go from Academy ratio to widescreen to the full screen. Like, you're just skipping around a bunch, not always for a specific motivated reason that you can tell as a viewer of the film. So that's fascinating. There's a ton of photorealism in the color grading of this film to exactly match, like, if you were to pull up side by side like Ana de Armas in Blonde, in Some Like It Hot, or in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes to the actual real thing, they have color graded it, they have edited it, they have used the film to perfectly mimic it. And, you know, as a film nerd, that is beautiful. Like, that alone is amazing. And if that's something that you're looking forward to this film for, you know, but you don't think you can handle some of the other darker themes with it that we'll talk about in just a second, highly recommend just skimming it to those scenes in particular. I also think there's an interesting use or lack thereof of musical score. It's used very sparingly. You very heavily notice it. And then when it is used, you notice even more so when it is not used. But that does give you a little bit of an unsettling feeling throughout the film, which I think is intentional, of course, again. But the main thing I think that's kind of been the major controversy of this film was rated NC-17 by the MPAA, which is the Motion Picture Association something. Basically, their major role across America, if you didn't know, is to set ratings so that parents of children can make more accurate predictions on what their children should or should not be watching. It's a way for the government to regulate film content without taking away the ability for filmmakers to truly express themselves and use their First Amendment rights, which that's a whole Hays Code conversation, which I won't bore you with right now. The question became, is this the correct rating for this film? NC-17, as delineated by the MPAA, means clearly for adult. Like, no children under the age of 17 are allowed in. With this film, I think that is the right call for a multitude of reasons. However, there's an interesting conversation to be had for this because it is specifically a streaming film. The director of the film himself has stated that there is way worse content on HBO weekly, including Euphoria and House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones. If you watch any of those shows, there is nothing in this film that I feel like is going to make you severely uncomfortable unless it's for a very specific personal reason. I just don't think there is anything ridiculously shocking about this film, and I don't know if that speaks to my own degradation in terms of rating, or if that's for another reason, which is where kind of I fall into it. I feel like the major reason this needs to be rated NC-17 for a streaming platform is this film deals with a lot of extremely dark themes that adults do not even want to go near or touch, and the way that those themes are presented are increasingly more disturbing than just simply talking about them. And that's where I think that this is a major kind of heads up to people who might think, oh, let me just watch the new Marilyn Monroe documentary. Well, that's not what this is, okay? And while of course this isn't Netflix's choice to make this movie NC-17, I think it kind of drives up a little bit of hype for the film while also making a clear stance that children should not be watching this. This is not a for family viewing weekly movie release like a lot of their others. And I would fully agree with that. Please, if you're watching me and for some reason are taking a 22-year-old's advice on what to show your kids, let's skip this one, please. You're not necessarily gonna walk away from this one feeling lighter, giddier, or anything else. This film definitely gives you a lot of mental fodder to walk away from the movie with and kind of think for yourself, or potentially be a jumping off point for further research into Marilyn Monroe or Norma Jean and exploring all of that. This film just really chooses to be stylistically different from pretty much anything you're ever gonna see, or it kind of amalgamates different styles from different periods across the world. And I think that's something that's worth seeing if you are indeed, like I said before, a film geek. I feel like if you go into this film expecting an Elvis type movie like what we just had this summer, you're going to be sorely mistaken. That is going to be all for this review. Thank you so much for watching this long review. Please let me know in the comments down below if you plan to see Blonde. Please also like this review if you did enjoy it, and consider hitting the subscribe button and the notifications bell, because I have reviews for a ton of the biggest movies coming out for the rest of the year, as well as TV show and entertainment related content that you're not going to want to miss. Make sure that subscribe button is turned gray and that notification bell is turned on. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you have an absolutely amazing day, and I will see you in my very next video. Bye everyone.